From the business exit secret formula, we're going to dive into the world of everyone keeps talking about AI, but Ben comes from a slightly different background. He's come from the IT world, and that's where it all starts, because obviously you need data centers, you need everything else to actually generate this AI, and that's what they're building now, because what we use in these data centers before is relatively small compared to that. Today, it's a great privilege to have Ben on our show. He's all the way from Perth, on the other side of Australia. So we're positioned in Brisbane. And a big warm welcome. Can you just tell us a little bit about your background and the journey of how you started and what you did and where you're heading now?
Thanks very much, David. My name is Ben. I'm the regional manager for Scale Up Tech in Western Australia. My journey started off as a pretty nerdy kid to begin with, that I always liked technology, always liked to help people in what I do. So I started on the ground as a field technician, worked my way up through projects, project management, a pre-sales technical kind of role. And then I started to realize, probably in my late 20s, that I was going, I need to be able to have a conversation with people to help out with their journeys a lot more. So I transitioned from being a in the basement kind of tech to an account manager, business development manager. Through my journey over the last 20 years now, I've gone through a lot of that system integrator path, having worked for some multinational system integrators, and became someone that now I'm in a scenario where I provide wholesale services for those system integrators and managed service providers that need that extra hands, that extra ability to fulfill the labor services and the change in the market. That natural journey for me went through very basic network stuff in my early days, went into systems. Cloud became very prevalent about 10 years ago. Now the journey is starting to transition into how that works of AI, of the traditional infrastructure, how that plays with, I guess, people, and how we procedurally make those things wrap together. So that's kind of a very abridged version of my last 20 years.
Right. So the part that everyone has systems, well, hopefully everyone has systems. When you're talking about systems integration, can you go a little bit deeper on that? Because you've got you've got obviously software systems, but there's a whole lot of other different systems. Now people are talking about AI systems and everything else. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, for sure. So in the early days, I found systems were pretty rudimentary of the identity of the person into email, hopefully into a phone system or other connected systems. But how that system integrator journey has really changed is it's getting really down into all the applications that people are using, whatever their cloud is, whether it's a bit of Google, a bit of Amazon, a bit of Microsoft, really honing down into everything people do on a daily. So, that the integration piece, instead of these silo little ecosystems of here's a Google bubble, here's a CRM bubble, here's an accounting bubble, that integration bit is a very daunting and challenging journey for people to go, I need these systems to do what I need to do to produce results for my customers, or financially to make things work, or just have some kind of knowledge tracker. So that integration part, I found that very, very early where these shadow systems of that siloing seem to occur, and always seeing the need inside businesses where people go, I want someone that can give me less footprint of headaches and make these things kind of tie together, because I'm the one person or I'm the 20 people in a business. We don't want to have these disparate things all over the place. We want to tie them in so we can get the most effective results without having to reinvent the wheel over each little system.
So I use Apple products. So they would be a fine example where you pick up your mobile or your watch, your computer and everything else, and it just all joins together. That would be a good example of a system that everything joins together, wouldn't it?
Yeah, for sure. Apple is probably one of the better closed proprietary systems that does exist. Really good for people making media content and kind of in that smaller space. They have an amazing, they know themselves and they know how to keep all of those systems wrapped in together. Um, Typically finding probably as the flip side of that in businesses that have a Microsoft centricity,
Yeah.
they seem to have a mixed bag of, have got a bit of Apple going on here on my phones, got a bit of Android going on here. So there seems to be that break between one system to another system. That also has that same natural fall when you go into applications that they're a bit broken. They're a bit higgledy-piggledy between different things. That really, really big push as we get into, I guess, AI and cyber resilience side of things, that's where having those integrated together is a really big push because effectively each platform ends up being a point of vulnerability and a point of probably operational headache in many scenarios of going, well, I've got the thing. How does the thing work? I use Zoom for my meetings. I want to make sure this talks to my email platform, and that's going to translate that right data to where it needs to go in my CRM. That's a really big drive that I've seen getting actually worse as cloud became more popular. The footprint became huger, and the scare factor became a bigger thing for the business leaders who typically wouldn't have the technical background to want or care to know. They go, I want the tool to make this awesome for me. That's where the space for, that integration outside of, I guess, Apple is the nice example here. I guess in IT, and I guess I come from a very Linux background, so I look at Apple as the beautiful prison, that it is good for what it is, where some people need different requirements that Apple sometimes ticks the box, sometimes doesn't, but they still want that same kind of experience that Apple does an amazing job of. I want the thing to work, and if it doesn't work, I want someone to come here and explain to me how I can get this to work and make the problems go away.
Most of our listeners are small to medium sized businesses. I know you do it for the very large businesses. What sort of recommendations? Is there a program they can buy and just plug it all in? Or is it something that they need someone else that's outsource it to do all of that type of work for them?
I guess this is something that it really depends on the journey of the businesses. So as I transitioned from very much Linux, which was heavily the tinfoil hat crowd of we've got this very nerdy thing that we want to know everything about, to a broader appeal, which definitely is where Microsoft came into the play. I've generally found Microsoft in those professional services businesses has that better fit as a general baseline platform. But there's different ways of cutting this. The biggest advice that I typically find in small businesses, seeing where do I even get started, it's find the right contacts of those IT people, those technical people that can have that conversation that isn't just nerdy jargon, three-letter acronyms or blue widgets versus red widgets. It's to go, well, what's the practical outcome? Where are we at right now? And what do we see our magical journey to be in the next 1, 3, 5, 10 years? Because that really does have a huge impact on picking what's the right thing. If you are, let's say, I don't know, a You service cars, for an example. You might have one shop. Your scale is probably going to have 5 or 10 people ever in the business. You kind of go, hey, I need something simple that's going to be point of sale to collect the cash, to organize bookings, and I'll need some kind of financial system to make sure I pay my suppliers and pay my workforce. So that kind of requirement of something that is going to be, you kind of know how big a business will get, you can kind of make a good pick to go, oh, hey, it might be good to have a bit of zero from a finance perspective. Google would be great for normal communication, and then whatever the point of sale is. Where you might have another business where you go, hey, I'm going to start at a one-man band. The expectation when I start acquiring the right customers, I'm expecting to grow to 20 seats within the first couple of years, and then I have an exponential kind of growth. So it's a very different conversation of picking and choosing what the right journey is depending on that scenario. That's where having a good IT advisor is very similar to having a good accountant or a good lawyer, of going, hey, tell me what I need right now. And if this is the path that my business is going to take, what's the transition look like? Is it a forklift upgrade of the first thing I implemented in the bin and start again? Or is it something that can grow and scale with my business?
You made a good point there about listing your practical outcomes. Most people just, I'll buy Microsoft and I'll start with a startup program or whatever, and then I'll step it up as I grow, and then use other different products as well, or Google or whatever you like. But they're not really thinking about the outcome, because obviously those software can step up accordingly because I have more seats, I have more availability. So they can cater, like I say, from the startup to a multi-billion-dollar company if required. The other part is that an IT advisor, you don't hear a lot about that because most of the time something stops and then you get a phone call, isn't it?
Typically, and I guess that's unfortunately where I've seen IT fall into the market. It is kind of an afterthought about how people look at their business strategy. That we make these grandiose business plans of here's our revenue targets, here's our go-to-market strategy, here's our product, and then technology seems to be an afterthought of, oh, I'll just jump on Amazon or I'll go to the local shop and buy some computers and it'll just magically sort it out. Which, if I went back in time 20 or 30 years, sure, there's a lot of things that you can drive things on paper-driven processes and technology becomes less important. But I guess the way the steer seems to be in the world as it is at the moment, that planning of what your outcomes are as a business from an operational and a financial standpoint has a very close tie down to what happens with technology. You might fall over things lucky and just happen to get the right technology and the right operations and run financial things, but you have a much less stressful journey when you've got that clear understanding of here's some key things that I expect to be doing in a business, and here's the underlying, the people, process, and technology that I need to be successful.
Oh, and well, obviously part of what we do is we have the business exit operating system, prepare, optimize and sell businesses. So very much of what you're doing is the optimization stage. So really you're plugging in the system. So for example, we use Asana, there's a whole lot of other different products, but they still need to talk to one another, don't they? So if your business, because obviously it's the Business Exit Secret Formula podcast, is about optimizing your business. Some people are at that prepare stage, but if you're now at the stage, this is what we're talking about with Ben today, is that we're trying to optimize that business. So when someone comes in to buy it, it's ready to go, it's rolling. It still needs, as things are changing with AI and other related things, we still need the IT advisor. Really, they're going to be the best people because we haven't quite got to the stage of a AI advisor. I think they're around the corner. They're building it, aren't they?
I hear the rumours.
At this present moment, that's the people you need to go to, isn't it, really?
Yeah, and look, I guess one of the good things about IT being as an industry that effectively reinvents itself every 6 years, wherever you're in the journey on that preparation or exit strategy, there's no point in time of getting a good understanding of where you're at right now and what that next goal looks like, where having the right advice is always a powerful thing that enables you to make the right business decisions. So I look at the business that I'm in at the moment. So realistically, what we do for the IT industry generally is to provide them additional labour hire services to help with their fulfillment. Because AI has caused a major ripple effect through the technology industry that people do have to adjust what they're going to do moving forward. So realistically, where traditional infrastructure or application people just did their nice nerdy thing, that they were good, they were safe, they knew their wheelhouse. The easy things they used to do are now repeatable with AI that moves at a pace that far outstrips any human to do that piece of work, which is definitely a risk that sits within the IT industry, but it's also one of those advantages at the moment as you transition soft skills from infrastructure or applications into understanding the cloud and the relationship to AI. There's this huge gap of the entire workforce that does need to figure out how to move with the industry, where I think that's one of the things that, well, AI may be one day the magical bullet that answers how the advisory services go and provides that advice. You still need someone with a really good understanding of what you do in a business to how that technology is going to help you. The downward trend that's going on at the moment with, I guess, changes within Australia and the European Union around being smart about the sensitivity of data that you hold and being responsible with it is causing that change to happen very, very quickly. And I guess that's where that prepare exit stage is very useful to, in preparing a business for your exit strategy, realistically to sell or merge into another entity, of how good does this look? A potential buyer, I guess, from my lens, and I guess I have been one of the people on the receiving end of the acquisition conversation within the technology sector quite a few times over. When you're doing your due diligence on a company that you want to acquire, it's, there's some basic fundamentals that are tried and tested throughout the industry of what does the client base look like? What does the revenue look like? Where does your market share exist? What is changing now, and I guess the Privacy Act probably has a major impact here, is that personal liability on data is a very huge thing that seems to be a blind spot to the Australian market of going, I've got a whole bunch of this information, I don't know what happens with that information. When doing an assessment to go, hey, I want to buy an entity, you're not just potentially buying the revenue and possible opportunities that's on the table from that organization, there's also the inference of buying some of their risk. So preparing a business to go, hey, this is what I personally look like on my supply chain. I am a high risk business. I'm a low risk business. I am someone that can scale or put nice guardrails around to be, cut out the bits that are the revenue that someone that wants to buy the organization in. That's something that a good IT-centric business advisor can give you that right information to go, whether you're on the selling side of the camp or the buying side of the camp, to go, hey, how do I pocket this kind of silo of the entity? So when I want to transition to whoever's going to buy the organization, is it good and ready to actually go? And that's something that really floats on both sides of the camp of, you don't want to reinvent the wheel. If you're acquiring a business that's been around for 20 years, you don't want to go through 20 years of a learning curve to make sure you've got the flavor of the business. You also don't want to rebuild that customer base. You've got an active customer base. Having the interpretation of their existing customer data is something really important of going, well, how can I maximize this to continue to honor the legacy of what you're acquiring and expand on that to go, well, hey, this is going to be great now progression as we move what this business was into its next phase.
Interesting. So most businesses would have a CRM, customer relations management system. I don't think a lot of people, like we talked a few weeks ago, I was like, whoa, that's a good point. They're not really thinking too much about that privacy of that CRM. They're punching out the emails or doing that. They've got some notes. They've got it all working. But I don't think the average business owner, let alone the one that's buying or selling, is really thinking too much about their responsibility for the privacy of everything, which they've probably got a lot of notes and everything else. And how do they manage that?
Yeah, so I know, I guess the way I've looked at this and Scale Up, who I work for, looks at this, is to go produce standardized reports or gap assessments that don't get into the technical weeds, that actually explain what risk and what opportunities are sitting with the data that you've got at the moment. So a CRM is useful in some ways. One of those big problems that I see is in relation to the Privacy Act's current changes from the Attorney General. I think that was in the last 6 months to go, you own the business, you are personally liable for what happens with that data. It's really to have an assessment to see that you understand where that data lives. Is that data within Australia's sovereign region as a good starting point? You don't necessarily want to have a data center or whoever hosts that CRM to house data in a region that they don't honor Australian rules. So probably the one I see most regularly within Australia is when people are hosting something that's in North America. They behold themselves to the risk of the Patriot Act, which doesn't care about the Australian privacy. It honors the American Privacy Act, which is they can do what they want with it. That's what NSA definitely define within that region. So it's about really getting that understanding to begin with of going, well, what have I actually got right now? And once you're empowered with knowing how things are really set up now, then you've got the good opportunity to see what to do with that. AI is a nice loaded dice here that the right AI can be used to definitely innovate and explode a business. That you can use that to go, I can see buying trends, I can see habitual habits that tell me that my customers are about to acquire, shut shop, buy a lot of my products. They start telling a journey that AI can move at a very fast pace. It also has in knowing how you use an AI, is going, when I ask AI a question, am I contributing back to the large language model? Am I giving my query, which your query or your search term might include your customer's information? Am I donating that information to an AI that possibly doesn't care about my sovereignty or my business interests? So there are really powerful things around a CRM to go, well, what have I got if it has an AI component, which, let's be real, everything seems to have an AI sticker slapped on it at the moment. Is that AI actually good? And by using this AI, am I putting myself in a business risk? Can I use this responsibly so I can maximize this while I'm in preparation stage? Or is this a way that I can do a nice big final push with my organization to show the opportunity that's sitting on the cards, that I can be a very palatable looking business to go, wow, I've just five-folded the revenue, or I've expanded my geographical territory from having a smart way of innovating the data that I already know. That's the great outcome. The concerning thing that I probably get from IT managers, and this happens in small businesses, in big multinationals as well. It's switching on an AI because someone has that fear of missing out. And at that point, there are some very cheap AIs that have sped to market quickly that will give up all your intellectual property as soon as you switch them on. The best analogy I've seen that represents those kind of risk scenarios is the directors made a decision. The decision was effectively to throw the bouncy balls down the road, which is the intellectual property bouncy balls inside your CRM, and then retrospectively tell their IT person, hey, I've got some AI switched on, and I just realized that I've got customers in the EU. So I am now personally liable for every EU citizen's data risk. Can you make sure all those bouncy balls are in my CRM bucket and they don't go anywhere else? It's a monstrous task that when you're driving that decision of switching on an AI or using your CRM for more, make sure the advisor is giving you the right sound advice to go, hey, this is what I want to switch on. Here's the outcomes. Is this actually going to be good for me, or is this just a shiny ball to make sure I'm on the bandwagon of AI?
That's a really interesting comment because I'll just go on. The first one was about software and being in a data centers of origin, obviously Australia. I actually did check out, like we use Asana for quite a lot, and they apparently decrypt all their stuff. So that's their security. But until I talked to you a few weeks ago, I didn't even look into that. So I went back and checked that part, and they have got whole systems in place because obviously they're dealing with a lot of personal details. But the next step is where, well, we do use AI, not putting in everyone's details, but you might have a general, but it builds up over time. But those AI centers, they wouldn't be situational ChatGPT, for example. They don't have locations in Australia, or do they?
No, they do. So
Okay.
from a personal standpoint, I definitely went down the Microsoft path with the vast majority of my formal training and how I got certified to be in the industry. So I'm very near with what Microsoft does. So I know with the Microsoft Copilot product set,
Hmm.
if you pick the right product, you do end up having Australian sovereignty. So that there is a very good rule about shared data responsibility that you'll see within Microsoft and Amazon as probably the two drivers that will tell you where the data center is housed, where the data at rest actually sits, to make sure it's not crossing sovereign borders. Quite honestly, Microsoft and Amazon are making very big investments into the Australian region. They both have a lot of data centers that go from Western Australia all the way to New South Wales, commitments around Canberra for some of the, I guess, federal government entities that have a much finer sovereignty requirement. But yeah, you can definitely ensure that you are getting your data sovereignty. And that's a very important thing that, like, I know for us, like, how we look at those first base assessments of what systems do you have, what's your basic processes to understand who's who in the zoo with your tapestry of technologies. When we start getting a little bit further to talk about governance, risk, and compliance, we'll actually get a hook in to see what systems you're using, which will actually tell us, like using, the Microsoft apps, Microsoft 365 in an Australian data center, or if you happen to acquire like a GoDaddy product, which falls you into North America, it will tell you, here's your software, here's the vendor that houses that platform, and it will specifically tell you what region that data exists, which is a very important thing to kind of go, well, when I can visually see this or where my data is, then it really empowers you quickly to go, okay, I do have data that's outside of one of the sovereign nations that I know I can play nicely with. Maybe I need to move this data somewhere else.
Right. So places like, obviously you talked about Microsoft, so GoDaddy, which are obviously the domain, well, not so much the hosts, are they? But they have a lot of control in that process, don't they? If you can elaborate a little bit further on that.
Yeah, so GoDaddy, I guess I typically see them in small market customers. Very cheap hosting. Really great way of getting a web presence up. They also market themselves as being an enablement partner of something like a Microsoft 365. And this is where the devil's in the detail about understanding who you're with and how you're with them. One of the instances they have is this, I guess, a specialized Microsoft 365 product that is North America based. It's very cheap, and it does have a very high level of violation towards current Australian law and recommendations. So yeah, quite honestly, it's one of those red flags I personally look for in those first initial conversations of, what do you have? Look at a website, which is like, realistically, I try to align to the SMB 1001 standard, which gives you that good surface understanding. As soon as you look up what website you're with, you see very quickly, hey, this website is connected to this mail record. This mail record is Microsoft Australia, Microsoft Singapore if you did it back in pre-2014, or if at any stage in time you've done it through GoDaddy, it goes, you're in North America.
Wow. So I play around with all of that myself, and I'm learning so much. But our listeners, just listen to all of that. You're personally responsible, right? That's what you're telling us. Personally responsible for the data of the people, whether it's on your CRM, whether you're just putting out something to use their information to put it out to the world on ChatGPT because you want to know more about something. So you jump on there and off you go. Like you say, you talked about the balls running off down the road. Well, I'd say the odds of getting those are they've already gone, haven't they? They've done a runner. And you might be able to grab the first few, but the rest are in wherever. So really, if you go back to the concept of one day, you're going to have a complaint, aren't you? That's generally what's going to happen, where someone's data's gone out to, hey, where did that go? And then you've suddenly got a problem, which you probably don't have the insurance. You probably, obviously, if you break the law, well, the insurance company say you've broken the law. This can all turn very pear-shaped quite quickly, can't it?
Oh, without a doubt. And I mean, typically the reason why things go pear-shaped quickly and quite horrifically is generally of not having the right information, or in a form that you can do anything with. So, that's where that real practical of understand what your business objectives are and understand what you've got is a huge starting point. The legislation has started wrapping around some of those big Australian-based violations that have occurred recently. What we're seeing around the Attorney General really trying to crack down on this is to go, if you're turning over greater than $3 million, you're personally liable for 30% of business turnover if you've got any compromised data.
Wow.
That is a huge thing that's coming from the federal government. At the moment, I think it's ASIC has a target for the non-APRA financial institutions who hold a lot of our sensitive Australian data to go, if you are not following the rules around, I guess, the mandatory notification breach, which is if you get a breach, you have to inform the community within 2 days that the breach has occurred, which is every one of your customers and every one of your suppliers. They're starting to crack down on those to go, hey, you've got sensitive information. If you compromise this information and you're not forthcoming to protect the Australians that you impact, we're going after the board. It's kind of useful to see the legal teeth to go, doesn't matter if you're hiding behind a trust, the C-class, the board members, they are the ones that are, the buck stops with them. They're the personally liable parties, which I guess that is a good thing about the seriousness of where this is at, that it really encourages you, like, when you're in either the middle or the exit strategy of a business, to go, well, I've made a lot of business decisions. I need to know where I'm at right now. And having open standards, so like, you know, if you're a multinational, an ISO would be great to tell you where you're actually at. But let's be practical about it. Those who has the budget for $20,000 a year to do an audit to see where you actually sit with ISO, and that's just someone to tell you what's happening. That's not to fix anything. It's just an indication. So that's where I guess I've, kind of drank the Kool-Aid on what SMB 1001 has done, which I guess realistically is an international standard to help people. That standard started in Queensland, and it's an internationally recognised standard that starts to tell you, hey, this is where my data sits and here's where my risk actually sits. It also starts highlighting some other things as you go through the process of cyber insurance. The major underwriters at the moment, and I look at Zurich probably as the biggest player here, is right now, if you haven't put the right protection methods in place to stop yourself from getting hacked, getting attacked, they won't honour a cyber insurance policy. If you've just thrown money at the problem without actually going through the effort to fix the problem, they'll walk away from your insurance policy because you haven't put the effort in. So there's a real business incentive there. And I guess I've seen this on the flip side where I've supported IT managers that have had $100K, $250,000 crypto attack and go, I have to pay a ransom. Oh no, they've paid a ransom. And then afterwards they've gone back to the insurer and go, oh, hey, can you cover this? Because we've got cyber insurance policies. And I've seen where they've turned around and gone, okay, show me the report of what you've done in the last 12 months to shore up and fix these problems. So it's a real big supply chain thing happening there of, insurance going, hey, you need to lead change by knowing what's happening.
So it sounds, my background's been in construction for a long time, and it sounds very much like the Health and Safety Act. If you don't have all the steps in place, like for example, you do an induction, you go through, but all that has to be recorded. So obviously, there are software like Hammertech and others that go through all the steps, and once upon a time, it used to be all paperwork. You used to have all these folders and things like that. And obviously you have to hold on to that information for a certain period of time. So really it's very much similar, isn't it? And where most people are very scared of WorkSafe and different people like that, they have had no, it's virtually in the same playing field, isn't it?
Very much so. The federal entity we have here is the Australian Cybersecurity Centre. That'd be your Fair Work equivalent in the IT landscape. At the moment, they've provided some frameworks. I think the Essential 8 framework is probably the biggest one. That they provided this framework back in 2016 that has been open to the market to go, hey, here's a guide or an instruction of what to follow. They made it law in 2018, and it's been something that now they're at the semi-narky stage of dealing with this, of going, people really need to listen to us. We got a lot of phone calls to mop up the mistake after the problems occurred. We'll still work with you to help fix a problem, which I've worked with them before. They are very useful once that breach has occurred. But to be practical, they go, we can avoid these problems by doing the right thing. That is a much better situation that they want people to take charge from that front. And it's becoming, I guess, like the comparison into the building industry of, getting a conveyancer to assess the asset. Is your asset of a sound quality? Is the roof about to collapse? Is the foundation strong enough? That's really where, the Essential 8 and I guess different cybersecurity frameworks and standards are starting to tell that story. It probably has a little bit of a different change of how they're looking at it, of knowing quite truly this scares people. Quite honestly, most business leaders are executives, they're administrative, they're sales. They don't have the tinfoil hat of the IT professional. The change in language is definitely turning things into something that is a thought process that can be understood in closer terms to like an evacuation plan. If I got attacked by some kind of cyber threat, how do I save my people? The same as if we were evacuating a building. What's our muster point? How do we get out? How do we do a head count? And then afterwards, how do we minimize the risk? How do we try to undo whatever's just occurred? That's definitely a change that's happening within the market right now.
So let's just sum it up for our listeners from the business exit secret formula. Not only the existing businesses, because remember, it takes time to prepare to get to the sale. Ideally, at least say 3 to 5 years. Then you've got a whole lot of different things where we've got IT security. So even the buyer can be caught into that. Would that be correct?
Yeah, correct. On the standards, there is definitely a focus on supply chain when looking at an active operational business, which really you've got the same kind of conversation starting to happen as the buyer to go, if I'm going to retain the domain name and the digital identity of the organization I'm buying, I'm still trading under that brand. By supply chain inference, you've bought the headaches. If you're buying something that is a leaky sieve from a cyber standpoint, that's something that becomes a really big problem that you don't really want for the people that are looking at exiting the market to go, well, how do I ensure that I've presented myself as palatable as possible as, I guess, Australia adopts the right to be forgotten and a lot of these EU legal concepts? That's going to fall into the Australian market of, if I'm planning on exiting in the next couple of years, knowing that data sensitivity, retention or deletion of old data becomes important, how do I prepare that the person that is planning on, or the organization that's planning on buying my baby, the entity that I
Yeah.
created, how do I make this as palatable as possible for them? And that, the biggest recommendation I would make there is to first talk to the trusted advisors you have to go, hey, this SMB 1001 cybersecurity standard, where do we sit with this? Or if you're a big business, so over $3 million in turnover, go, how do we align to Essential 8? Those are the first questions that you'll know very, very quickly. Your IT advisor, are they where the market is right now, or are they doing the same Google concept that you and every other business owner
Yeah.
is doing? And it will set you that really good starting point of going, okay, where am I actually at? If you get a good answer from your technology advisor, ask them to do an assessment just so you can see where things are at. And ideally, look at a third party to do the same thing of going, hey, is the people I know and trust, did they look at me correctly and point blank in the eyes? I understand what you've said and I'll get you an advice that you can understand and do something with. And can I get an objective third party to give me a yardstick to go, if there's a gap between these two things, there's a problem. These things should be the exact same consistent message. If there's a gap, find the person that's going to give you the right advice to go, here's what it looks like right now, that they can speak in your language, understand it in business terms, not just techie jargon, and then look at your path forward of going, well, if I'm here, I can now make a decision on seeing where my risk lies, how I can make sure I get the most out of this organization on my way out to, innovate with technology ideally, or at least minimize risk portfolio. And that's going to set you up for the supply chain side of things, because supply chain becomes a major thing that you need to consider from that scenario of whether it's an exit strategy. There is supply chain risk that you've already made as the current business owner that can be inferred to the sale. There's also that other scenario that you start looking at it now when you're signing up to new vendors to work with. They want to do a supply chain lookup on you of going, are you a problem in this chain? If, let's say logistics provider as an example, if a logistics provider gets attacked, as I can think of a couple that have been attacked in the last 6 months, if you get attacked and you can't move product, this diminishes whatever my core brand is, and I become a inference problem. Can you make sure that that issue isn't going to exist? That's the world that we're in right now. You start doing that, you become very, very palatable to someone that wants to buy your organization to go, cool, here's another thing that I can know and understand what they're doing. I can either use what they've got because they've done such a sound job of it, or I can cut this up for pieces and move it into my existing system without going through a long-winded due diligence conversation with our technology people.
Wow. So, just to wind up this podcast, just going to ask you, because we've covered a lot, and obviously Ben, as you can see, is an expert in his trade, we'll call it, and the world of IT and all these associated parts. If we just broke it down for our listeners, just 3 points that they really want to focus on, just walk, because there's probably 1,000 points that have gone on that we've covered. But 3 main points, probably number 1 being the top, and number 3, if they need to start working on today. Typically a business that's sort of, like you say, turning over $1 to $2 million a year, what would be their ideal 1, 2, 3 points to start on in this world of IT, AI?
Yeah. First one, talk to your trusted technology advisor to ask for a report to either SMB 1001 cybersecurity standard or Essential 8 cybersecurity framework. Number 2 is talk to your existing operational team, mostly your HR and finance people, of are we using any AI now? If so, what? And then I guess probably the final thing is to go, what's my timeline? I think that's probably a really big important thing of what is my timeline of my next decision, whether it's exiting, whether it's merging, whatever it is, what time am I planning on doing something by? That would be the best advice I could personally give.
Well, thank you very much, Ben. I've really enjoyed our interview today. There's so much there. What we'll do is we'll do a bit of a guide, and we'll put those in the show notes just as a brief guide. So it's just got those 3 points, and that would just start you off. And like I say, just remember, go back to your advisors. They can be quite often an independent type person to the team you've got. And then what are you going to go moving forward from there? The outcome, as Ben was saying. So thank you very much. And the business exit secret formula. And the next show will be in 2 weeks' time.
Excellent. Thank you very much for having me. Have a good one.